Desiree. So let's start off like we always do, seeing what's inside the February 2022 card kit of the month by Spellbinders called Always Remember. You get your card that tells you what you're going to get in your kit and some inspiration to help you get going in your creations. You get a piece of mirror, white, dark blue, purple, yellow, pink, light blue, a darker pink, and a mint green cardstock. You get your block of double-sided foam squares, which the entire block can be used, and a roll of double-sided tape. Some clear iridescent sequins, and for those of you that have been here before, you know they are my favorite. Your 10 card bases and envelopes, and these are standard A2 size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and these can either be side folding for a portrait or top folding for a landscape card. A 6x6 paper pad. Now remember, this paper pad is that. It is a paper pad, not a cardstock paper pad. So what that means is this weight of the paper is a little bit lighter than what you're probably used to for regular cardstock. I'm going to say this is just under 65 pounds, but it is great and perfect for layering. Remember, this is a kit, so all the papers and all of the embellishments are made to go together. You get these chipboard frames, and yes, they are sticky. Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. Some chipboard stickers for the front of your cards to embellish. My favorite, the die cut embellishment pack, where there's just some wonderful elements in here, from florals to envelopes to sentiments and to other images that are following along with this kit. A beautiful stamp set, mainly of sentiments in both a type font and a script font, which I love that mix. And then, of course, the die set that you'll always receive. And this is a beautiful vine, and along with some sentiments. Let's get started making our first card. As always, I always try to stick with the contents of the card kit. Not everybody has the materials that some may have to build their cards, and this might be the only kit that they receive and the only supplies that they receive to make their cards. So that's why I kind of stick with just the elements in here to show that you can make your cards just using the contents. I do suggest, though, having a pair of sharp scissors and having some liquid adhesive. You'll see those are items that I do pull in, and of course some ink and a die cutting machine. Yes, need that for the die set and also to stamp your images. I'm starting out by layering some pattern paper with some of the cardstock, the solid cardstock, and I'm layering down some of the floral images, propping one up, the third one in the corner, using the double-sided foam squares. Now, I do have leftovers from other kits, so I use that up first. Whatever I don't use from this kit, such as the double-sided tape and the foam squares and so forth, I do save them. I break it down and put it into the areas in my space. I've chosen one of the sentiments as well from the die cut pack, and it simply says hope, and I'm going to place that right on the front of my card, and I'm going to add some of those iridescent sequins using my wax pencil. This is a wax pencil that's used in the nail industry. For the next card, same process. If you've seen my videos previously, when I work with the Spellbinders kit, I'm very much inspired for the collaging capability that this kit allows and creates and inspires me to do. And that's really what I focus on. So starting out with those layering elements, having the pattern paper be the base, and then just creating those layers on top of that. Placing this down onto one of the card bases. I am pulling in some of the chipboard pieces. You can see the swan there, and I'm also going to use one of those chipboard pieces as my sentiment. Even though they are stickers, I do like to add a little bit of liquid adhesive to make sure that it doesn't eventually fail to stay adhered to my card. I'm going to prop up from the die cut pack. I chose a spray of florals that I'm going to set right up underneath the swans, and then the sentiment is going to sit right above that as well. So kind of with the layering of the pattern paper and the cardstock, created that frame for these elements to be on. Added some of those sequins. I took two of the pieces of pattern paper, layered them up onto each other, and then cut that into my trimmer, both down to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then cut them on a diagonal. This way I was sure to get the two pieces that I need. I'll be using one from each of the pattern papers. The floral pattern is going to go to the bottom, and the blue wood grain is going to go towards the top. And whenever I add my pattern papers to the card base, I do use the double-sided tape. It's when we get into the collaging elements that I'll pull in my liquid adhesive. I'm using my Spellbinders tool-in-one to remove the release paper, and I'm just going to line that right up along that edge and place that down. I've taken two pieces of the solid cardstock and just cut them down into shapes, and I'm going to offset them. So I'm going to have this shadow that's going to come off of the light pink cardstock. So it's a very quick way to get that shadow look just by layering and offsetting your cardstock. Again, removing that release paper using my tool-in-one, and I'm going to set that right into the center, just up a little bit. So not in the center, I guess I shouldn't have said that, but up a little bit. Grabbed all of those butterflies, and I'm just going to choose my elements to place around. I'll be propping up the sentiment that I pulled from the die cut pack and setting that in place. And then I curled the leaves up on each of the butterflies, and then I will be gluing down into, just putting glue in the center of those. Excuse me. So they'll have just a little bit of movement. Yes, if you put this in an envelope, it will flatten down, but it won't flatten down to where they were completely flat. It will have some dimension added. I did toy with the idea of adding some foam tape underneath the wings so that they did stay up to add that texture and dimension, but I chose against that and just put glue in the center, and then just making sure that is pressed down onto the card base. Again, coming in with some iridescent sequins just to give a little bit of sparkle to the front of our card. Still working off of the die cut elements and creating our layers. One of the things that I do love is when you have a piece of pattern paper and it's a floral design like that background is, I don't like to cover that up. I love pattern paper. Pattern paper is, to me, the best way to create our cards because the pattern paper can do the work for you. It adds the design, it adds the texture, it adds the elements. And if you just add sequins or sentiment, your card is very much set. That's what I wanted this background to do. Now I'm adding some of the gold foils that come off of this, but not covering it up too much. That's why my panel that I created is a little smaller than normal. It's like a strip because I didn't want to hide all of those florals coming from the back. I'm pulling in from the die cuts the rainbow, and they had a piece of the pattern paper with just raindrops coming down, and some of them were foiled, so I thought that was a great backdrop. And then there was another piece of pattern paper that was clouds. How convenient. So we're going to add the rainbow, and then in the die cut there were clouds as well. So we're just going to arrange those around and prop one up using our double-sided foam squares. Again, to give that dimension. I love dimension and texture on the front of my cards. So whenever I could add some, excuse me, foam squares or foam tape, or even layers of cardstock, I think it just adds to the element of your cards. I'm going to add some sequins just to the clouds to help them to stand out because they are so soft in color against that sky background. Here is a great example of letting your pattern paper do the work. Some of the pattern papers in our packs, just as this one, has a design on it. It has the floral image, but only down in one corner, or it's just on the edges. By trimming that to the size of your card base, and this was cut 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and simply taking a sentiment to offset that floral design, you already have your card. Adding some sequins to add that shine, and this card took absolutely no time, but those watercolor flowers are just absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to come in with one of those frames. Now, so you saw me put glue on that. Yeah, you should tear the release paper off first. Yeah. This is when I found out and realized that it had release paper on it as I'm cutting it around and putting my backdrop in the frame. Yay me. But it's what we do when we create. We have fun. We make boo-boos, and they're happy accidents. That's what I love I love that phrase, and I believe that was by Bob Ross. Yes. So it does have a release paper to it. So just make sure you remove that before you do what I do. I'm creating my only me. So I took my pattern paper. I'm going to place that onto my card base. This is going to be a landscape card. And I'm going to take that frame and that pattern paper, even though it's not silver or a mirror cardstock, the way that those lines go through, it gives you the illusion that it's a mirror, that it's a piece of glass, which I thought was really cool. I couldn't find my double-sided foam squares. So I had that scrap piece of cardstock. So I just cut it into little squares. I'm going to line those up and layer those up onto the side because this is going to actually overhang the frame. So use up those scraps as double-sided foam squares. It worked like a charm. If you all could only see outside of the filming range, you would just laugh hysterically. Notice how I said you would not be shocked. Because we all are creative, messy. And things are just, I just throw things out of the way of the camera. And I must have done that with the double-sided foam squares. So, yeah, I do eventually find them though. But you can see, all I'm doing is just simply adding glue, liquid adhesive to these pieces of cardstock, which are the same height as our frame. And they accomplish the same thing as your double-sided foam squares. Most likely I would have done that anyway, only because the double-sided foam squares, they're really thick, and I really like that. So they actually would have been higher than my frame. So I was kind of glad that I couldn't find them. All right, getting set to put our pattern paper onto our card panel for our next card. Kind of creating a framed scene. Notice how I removed the release paper this time. Yes, we learn from our boo-boos. I actually did this time, which I thought was wonderful. So again, creating that frame, putting a backdrop on that frame, putting the candle right in that opening. And then I'm not worried about it being behind the frame because these florals are going to cover up the base. So you're kind of giving that illusion that that candle is sitting in the window. You don't always have to say, okay, this has to sit behind the frame and all of that, especially if you have these elements that are coming in before it. And that's how I was looking at that. I stamped one of the sentiments from the stamp set, and I'm just doing a very loose fussy cutting around this sentiment so that I can just place that up onto my card base. You may not have dies. This does not have a die that matches these sentiments. It doesn't mean that you can't cut around them. Just means that this is where those sharp scissors would come in, just to do a very quick fussy cutting around them to give the illusion that this was die cut. Very quick, very easy. And I am not a fussy cutter person. Nope. But I do it begrudgingly. I'm going to clip off the ends of anything that's hanging over and add a few of those sequins. And I so apologize for the officer that is driving by my house with his siren on. Yes, sorry if you heard that. For our next card, again, pulling in one of those frames. These were a lot of fun to create with. Again, remembering to pull that release paper, putting this on top of my piece of cardstock, just letting it grab and not pushing too hard so it doesn't stick to my craft mat there, because it would. Ask me how I know. They're very difficult to get up sometimes. And I'm just placing my elements in there. I'm going to put a piece of foam tape just underneath those florals. Make it look like that even though it's behind the frame, they're actually coming towards you to give a 3D look. The paper, the pattern paper, is actually upside down. I did that, so that's awesome. So always make sure your pattern paper is going in the right direction. But with all of the elements that I'm putting on this card front, it's only going to be noticed if I mention it to that person. This is not a note that I would put inside the card to say, hey, by the way, the pattern paper is upside down. But we keep going. I am not one to, when we make a mistake or anything like that, got to start all over and throw the card away. Keep going with it. You will be surprised at what comes of that, on how you build and how you keep building upon it. Anything can be hidden. Anything can be distracted from. Always give that a try. Just adding a few last sequins on that card. For our next one, we're going to pull in the die. So I used the gold mirror cardstock and just cut one of this beautiful leaf frame. You could cut two of these to make a complete oval. I just chose the one. I love the accent of the one. And the pattern paper that I have in the center is actually a gold printed script. So it really accented that frame really well. The pattern paper in the back is like had a vintage feel to it. So I was really saying, okay, for those of you that have been here, I am a huge fan of the vintage look. And I know you haven't seen vintage photo in a while. Probably because since my Christmas series, I had to take a break. It always comes out in the Christmas series. But very elegant, very dainty. Again, you don't need a lot of elements to do your collaging. Very simple, very clean elements to create your card front. Because I did all of that on the front, I'm putting my double-sided tape right onto the card base, and then I'm going to make sure that the card's opening the right way, and just add a few sequins, and we will call this card done. I get a lot of questions. What am I doing with my wax pencil with my finger? I'm cleaning off the glue that's coming through the sequin. When I do that, here are the 10 cards that we created featuring the Spellbinders card kit of the month for February, called Always Remember. I will have all of the links to the Spellbinders shop, their blog for even more inspiration, for the kits themselves, and I encourage you to check out all of their kits that they have available. They keep growing this list, and there's value packs where you can have multiple kits put together at a savings. So check those out only if you want to. And just so you know, they are affiliate links, which means when you click on those and make a purchase, I receive a small commission at no extra cost to you. But again, only if you want to click on those. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Starting to get back into the swing. We are through the first month of 2022. The year's already going by fast. It's amazing how fast the year is going. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you're enjoying it. Have fun with this process while you create your art, and I will be talking to you in the next video. Till then.